Alright, what's happening, y'all? It's your boy Rico from RicoScores. I'm coming with some really random, all over the place free agency rumors concerning the Washington Commanders, man. First of all, we got to talk about how much of a purge is going down with this Washington Commanders roster. Adam Peters is not playing with y'all. It's probably a little bit deeper than y'all probably even think. Also, some stats that show the Rivera was even cheaper than what we expected, like extremely cheap over the last 3 years in free agency spending. Also, my boy Tim McGrath got a promotion, so that's going to be big time for the players' health and wellness and prevent injuries and things like that. We're going to dive into that. Also, a 2024 draft wide receiver was comped to Art Monk by a national draft analyst. We're going to talk about that and more, a whole lot of different things. The official actual draft pick of that compensatory pick that we got from the 49ers when we traded them Chase Young. We have like the official actual draft pick number on that. But before we dive into all of that, make sure you stiff arm that like button, stiff arm the subscription button, and stiff arm the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Make sure you stay tuned for all of the content. Free agency technically starts March 11th. That's the legal tampering period. Then the new league year officially starts March 13th. But either way, I have so many videos to get to y'all before then. So stay tuned, man, because I'm about to ramp it up. I'm about to start spamming videos because I have so many great ideas. I definitely want to get them out there before we get to March 11th. So stay tuned. Let's go and get to it, man. Let's get it. All right, so first of all, I want to talk about how Adam Peters is not playing with these new Commanders, man. He is not. This is a complete purge, or if you want to call it a cleansing of a roster that only won 4 games last year. So, I mean, when you only win 4 games, who can you honestly say is a must keep? You know what I'm saying? So, have y'all really noticed that Adam Peters and the Commanders have not re-signed any of the 2024 free agents from the 2023 roster? Not a single one. This list includes Curtis Samuel, Kendall Fuller, Jacoby Brissett, Cody Barton, Cornelius Lucas, Jeremy Reeves, F.L. Bada, David Bada, Khalid Hudson, David Mayo, Tyler Larson, Antonio Gibson, Joey Sly, Jamison Crowder, Byron Pringle, Alex Armah, Sadiq Charles, Terrell Burgess, Jabril Cox, Brandon Dillon, Cameron Curl, James Smith-Williams, Case Toohill, and Curtis Brooks. And some of those guys are restricted free agents, so I'm surprised that we're not on that already because, I mean, it's going to be really hard for those guys to leave just in general. If we have any intentions of bringing them back, we can lock them down easily and for very cheap. But right now, the Commanders are just sitting still, chilling. We have not re-signed any of the 24 guys that are our free agents, again, that are coming from that 2023 roster that are now restricted or unrestricted free agents entering the 2024 season, league year, whatever you want to call it. I mean, the only guys that we've technically re-signed were 2 2023 practice squad players in Mason Brooks and Casimir Allen. Of course, Brooks is going to compete for like an interior backup offensive line spot, and Casimir Allen is more than likely competing for like a returner and depth wide receiver spot. So be on the lookout for those guys. They're practice squad players, but I feel like there's a reason that they went out of their way to bring those guys back first as far as practice squad players though. But that's it. After cutting Charles Leno, Logan Thomas, and Nick Gates, Adam Peters has literally cut more players than he's re-signed for the Commanders right now. Remember that pause he had during his initial press conference where they asked him, how do you feel about the roster, basically? And do you feel like you need to do any major changes? And then everything else, every other question in the press conference that I've ever seen, interviews at the combine, whatever, he's quick. He's like, I might think about it for 1 second. I develop my answer. I'm on it. That one was like he went brain dead for a second. Like he was buffering. He was like, man, I guess he was just trying to find a nice way to say it. Like he didn't want to say, nah, this roster is terrible and we need to completely do a whole 180, a cleanse, a purge of this roster. So it kind of took him like 4 or 5 seconds of just to figure out like what he was gonna say, how to put it nicely, how to make it political. I don't know, but that showed you back then that he's like, oh yeah, nah, this roster ain't it. We're about to make some changes here immediately. All of these unrestricted free agents, a lot of them will probably end up walking because we are not in the business of bringing back a lot of these guys that contributed to a 4-win season. I'm not mad at it. So I don't necessarily think that this means that when it's all said and done that we haven't re-signed anybody out of all of these 24 guys, but you can tell that they do not see any of these guys as priorities, I'm assuming, because other teams are re-signing their 2024 free agents that came from their 2023 rosters. Even before free agency has started officially, you know, you have access to your own players on your own current roster. You can re-sign them today if you wanted to. Adam Peters is not doing that, and again, a lot of other teams do. A lot of teams are already, and you never know. Maybe things can change within the next 3 days, but so far the Commanders seem to be waiting to see what they can probably end up getting on the open market, and then maybe they try to re-sign guys after that. Maybe they prefer some people at those specific positions that's coming from other teams on the open market, and then like say, you know, we're like a week or two in the free agency, say it's like mid-March, late March, and they haven't necessarily felt like they filled that position enough, then maybe they'll reach back and be like, hey man, you were playing for the Commanders last year, you want to come back and play for them again with this new regime? So it just clearly shows that they are not a priority right now, which is really interesting. And I also assume that means that a lot of these guys will probably end up going elsewhere because they probably won't want to sit around and wait until the Commanders give them a call to try to re-sign them. Or maybe the Commanders have shown interest, but maybe they're asking for more money than the Commanders are willing to give them, and the Commanders like, all right, go ahead, test the market all you want. We'll be here waiting for you when you're willing to come down to our price. You never know. There's a lot of different situations. Between 24 players, there's probably like 24 different reasons why we haven't re-signed anybody. But either way, it's clear to show that neither of these guys are a top priority, because if we really felt like we needed to re-sign any of these guys, they would be re-signed, because again, other teams are already re-signing their guys to long-term deals and things like that, or even reworking contracts. Like Tyrann Mathieu got like a contract extension to make himself cheaper for the Saints, but also for him, he wants to stay home. He's from Louisiana and all of that, and he wants to just keep playing for New Orleans, and he's happy being there, so he was willing to take that pay cut to stay a little bit longer. I mean, there's all kinds of things that people are doing with their guys, and we're not doing any of that. I guess Adam Peters, Dan Quinn, and all those guys are like, hey man, see what happens. And if y'all want to come back and sign for this specific number that we're willing to give you, then cool. But you can go ahead and test that market and try to get more money if you want. Go ahead. But who would I personally, as in Rico of Street Scores, prioritize re-signing out of those 24 guys? Well, hopefully before March 11th legal tampering period. From the bigger names, I would say like Curtis Samuel, depending on price, and Cameron Curl also super dependent on price. Like, I'm not willing to give either of those guys the money that they're probably asking for. And I highly doubt that the Commanders are willing to as well, because otherwise it would have been done by now. And then when it comes to like the lesser guys, I would love to see what Antonio Gibson can look like in this offense. I think he could be explosive again. People that are built like middle linebackers should not be able to take a screen 80 yards. I think his ceiling is still ridiculous. He's just been used incorrectly. I think he's been underutilized. I think if you can fix the fumble problems, which is really difficult. Some people just never get rid of that. So I'm not saying it like it's easy, like just re-sign Antonio Gibson and then work on him with his fumbles and it's just going to magically go away. I'm not saying that at all, but just projection and ceiling wise, maybe it's a glass half full on it. But I really think Antonio Gibson could go absolutely slap stupid in a Cliff Kingsbury offense, especially with the way that they're building this team with potentially bringing in either a Jayden Daniels or Drake May that's also going to use their legs very well. It's going to open things up so much. Cliff Kingsbury with his air raid system, even though it's going to be a lot more run heavy than people expect, it's going to involve tight ends more than people expect, and signing Zach Ertz showed you that as well. And the way Cliff Kingsbury used Zach Ertz in 2021 and like 9 games into 2022 before Zach Ertz tore his ACL, he's shown you that his air raid system is not a typical air raid system. There's more tight end usage. There's more running the ball. There's more even just straight up running plays outside of shotgun, like running plays single back and all of that type of stuff, like under center. But at the end of the day, the air raid system is built on deep shots, and defenses are going to have to account for that. They're going to have to take people out of the box and do whatever it takes to just make sure they don't get beat deep. And from that, you're going to have, with those lighter boxes, a guy like Antonio Gibson in space could eat. So I would love to bring back Antonio Gibson for very cheap. Right now, SpotTrack has his market value at 3.5 per year. I would be willing to do that, but maybe the Commanders aren't. Maybe they're hoping they can get him back for cheaper, and that's why it hasn't happened yet. Who knows? Again, there's probably 24 different reasons as to why we haven't re-signed 24 of these guys. Who knows though? I'm also excited to potentially see what Khaleke Hudson could do, especially now that he's finally seemed to get his stride. He's found somewhat of his calling, like he's developing and getting better and better by the game. And I definitely would love to see if he could play the same role as like a Jaron Curse from the Dallas Cowboys, especially under Dan Quinn and Joe Wood Jr., who were using Curse in that way for Dallas. I feel like they can literally deploy Khaleke Hudson in a very similar role. And of course, y'all know I hope we bring back Jabril Cox and at least give him an honest shot of outside linebacker. But luckily for us, he's one of the restricted free agents. So if they're even mildly interested in bringing him back, it should be pretty easy to do with that restricted free agent contract situation rather than an unrestricted where they're just completely open to anybody signing them. And I like Joey Sly enough to at very least bring him back to compete with another kicker that Larry Izzo, our new special teams coordinator, may bring in to compete with him. Maybe we have like a two-man kicker competition for at least a little while. And then sticking with special teams, speaking of special teams, I do hope we bring Jeremy Reeves back on a super cheap deal, of course. And then lastly, I would probably bring back Cornelius Lucas as well for very cheap. And maybe there's a few more guys I would like to bring back, but those are some of the more like notable names and why I would want to bring those guys back. Those are some of the names that just pop off the screen when I'm looking at that list of 24 guys. Now moving on, let's talk about how cheap Rivera has been. So the Spot Track released a list of estimated cash spent over the past 3 NFL seasons from 2021 to 2023. And guess where the Commanders are? 29th. Just to put it in perspective, the Cleveland Browns spent the most with $1.3 billion. We're 29th with $1.011 billion. Technically $1.011 billion. The Cleveland Browns again are number one with $1.332 billion. And it just, I mean, the numbers keep going, of course, but the only people that spent less money than us over the past 3 seasons are the Patriots, the Falcons, and the Bears. Really interesting, very telling. Thanks a lot, Ron Rivera. Now, I'm not saying that Adam Peters is going to come in and catapult us to the top 10 of spending teams, but I'm pretty sure just by default, he's going to end up spending more than what Ron Rivera spent. First of all, Ron Rivera was just really cheap. He was bargain bin shopping all the time. And I'm not saying that Adam Peters and friends are just going to go out there and just spend all the cash in the world and try to get like top free agents. I would love to bring in a Justin Simmons, but we got to see in all of that type of stuff. But still, man, I mean, when you're at the bottom, you can't go anywhere but up. Just like last year, how our defense was literally ranked dead last in a lot of statistical categories. I'm expecting Dan Quinn and Joe Wood Jr. to come in here and fix a lot of that. But when you're 32nd last year, you can't go anywhere but up. So I'm expecting automatic improvement. The question there is how much of an improvement. And same thing with this free agency spending. I'm not demanding that they go out there and spend all of our cap space. But it would be nice if they go out there and are very active in free agency, even if it means signing a bunch of different cheaper guys rather than just 1 or 2 expensive guys. Hopefully there's like a healthy balance of both. I think that would be ideal. If we were to go get like a Tyron Smith and a Justin Simmons, and then from there, you know, you just figure out the rest, I would be happy with some cheaper signings all across the board there. I mean, of course, ideally, I would love like a Bryce Huff or Jonathan Grenard from the Texans at edge rusher, but man, you give me Tyron Smith and Justin Simmons, I'm not questioning anything else you do for the rest of free agency. I don't care. And then speaking of Justin Simmons, luckily for the Commanders, and I've talked about this in several videos, but shouts out to Nick Corte for pointing this out, that safety, man, it's like the most devalued position in football right now. You could argue that when you're comparing how much everything's valued currently, that tight end and running back are valued less than safety overall. But if we're talking about going from 2023 to 2024, safety has been devalued the most within this past year, man. It's crazy. And what makes it even worse is that this is kind of like a down year for the safety in the draft as well. So this is crazy. But when you're looking at total 2024 salary shed now, at safety has now crossed 9 figures at $103 million. So when we're talking about teams releasing players of certain position groups, quarterback is at the very bottom. Teams are not releasing their quarterbacks. There's only $6 million worth of money released in quarterbacks so far this offseason, but safety has almost everybody doubled. $3 million worth of safety money have been released so far this offseason. That is crazy, man. These guys are so devalued. This market is so flooded, and it's a good thing for the Commanders, but it's a terrible thing for the players, especially if you're a safety. But again, luckily for the Commanders, on top of that, I also feel like we need a starting center, and centers are becoming devalued as well. Because when you look at this picture right here, shouts out to Jason from Over the Cap. He tweeted, here's the growth in the average of the top 5 at each position on offense from 2014 to 2023. Definitely outpacing the cap on offense with some explosive growth at right tackle and quarterback, but running back and center were 2 positions suffering. So basically, there's also a trend of centers being devalued relative to other position groups, and even the cap space. Like right now, the cap space is growing faster. Like say for example, and this isn't the exact math, but say we gain like $10 million in cap space going from 2023 to 2024. It looks like through history, the center contracts would only go up like $3 million, where cap space went up like $10 million. Like relative to cap space, centers aren't getting paid at the same percentage that cap space is growing. So they're also being devalued, but in a different way. Safeties is just all straight up being cut. They're just releasing the safeties. Like we no longer care about those heavy safety contracts, and if y'all want to sign anywhere, y'all are gonna have to sign for cheaper later. Whereas centers aren't necessarily getting cut as much. I mean, they were like 5th on that picture with the safeties getting cut and all of the different position groups who's getting straight up released for cap savings. But when it comes to centers, even after they're cut, or even if they're just free agents, when they do sign, they're just not getting as much of an increase to their contracts compared to the previous year. Like even the salary cap, man, like poor centers, man, they're seeing the salary cap go up a significant amount, and they're not even making that much more on the market the next season by that amount. The next up, Bob Myers spoke on his role at the Combine, and he did like a whole video through the Washington Commanders YouTube page and things like that. And the most important quote that he said from it was, quote, sometimes when you just ask questions, it helps the leaders find answers themselves, unquote. And I like that. So basically, even though he's coming from a basketball background and making the transition into helping in the Washington Commanders, a football team, he basically brought over his transferable skills to help everybody in the processes, no matter if you're doing basketball, football, baseball, whatever, like transferable skills that can work across several different professional sports. Like he's talking about processes like interviews and things like that. Like for example, he said he made mistakes in the past with like overreacting from interviews, and he was basically at the Combine to be that extra voice of make sure you rethink that, or make sure you don't overreact with this, or don't get too hasty here with this thought off of just something real quick or anything like that. Basically, from the point of view, he also mentioned from a guy that's been in their shoes. Now, granted, it was on the basketball side of things rather than football, but he's had to go to combines, NBA instead of NFL. He's had to draft people. He's had to talk to free agents and things like that. And he's basically like, I know I'm basketball and I know y'all are football, but there's still some things that I could potentially help y'all with to learn from my mistakes. And I'm happy that he was there in that capacity. I mean, of course, he shouldn't be out there making actual football decisions, but again, like he said, asking the questions so that the actual real decision makers can formulate their own answers based on those questions. I appreciate him for that. And I'm very sure he was also there for talking to agents and helping develop healthy relationships with potential free agents and other NFL teams' decision makers. So like if we're trying to conduct trades or anything like that. But of course, he wouldn't talk about that on camera. So that's kind of like some secret agent work right there. I'm sure he was there for more than just helping those guys with the interview processes and things like that. But still, I'm happy he was there for that as well. Now, next up, my boy Tim McGrath got a promotion. The Commanders hired Tim McGrath as their full-time senior director of player health and performance, overseeing all aspects of the team's athletic training, strength and conditioning, nutrition, and player wellness. He joined the team as a consultant late last season. Well documented that Josh Harris views sports science and analytics as edges for his teams. Since last June, the Commanders have hired football data scientist Preston Biro, a senior VP of football strategy, Eugene Shin, my dog, and now a senior director of player health and performance, McGrath. I'd expect even more hires in the coming months. Shouts out to Nikki Javala for reporting that. And basically, again, if you don't exactly know who Tim McGrath is, this is directly from the Washington Commanders website, but I already did get like a full 30-minute breakdown on him sometime in the winter, like late November, early December or something like that. But basically, McGrath will oversee the training room along with strength and conditioning, nutrition, sports science, and player wellness programs at the organization. McGrath arrives in Washington with an extensive background in clinical practice, rehabilitation, and performance programming and implementation in professional sports. He has 20 years of professional sports experience and 22 years of clinical experience. Quote, Tim McGrath has been an incredible resource for our players since joining the organization as a consultant towards the end of last season, said General Manager Adam Peters. I'm excited to officially welcome him to the organization in a full-time capacity as our Senior Director of Player Health and Performance. So whatever he did this past year, it was good enough for them to be like, nah, we don't need you here just as a typical consultant here kind of advising things. We need you here full-time running this whole thing. I know you have this whole business on the side that you do. You've been all over the world helping professional sports teams in different sports worlds, different countries and things like that. But we need you here full-time, man. We need you to turn this whole injury situation around for the Commanders. And so whatever he's done this past season, they loved it. They absolutely loved it and felt like he deserved a big-time promotion and a permanent full-time position. Continuing with the quote, I've been impressed with the time I've spent with him since I was hired here in January. He has a vast knowledge in all areas of player wellness and athlete performance and will play a vital role in improving our overall athletic training and athlete care services here in Washington, unquote. That's from Adam Peters as well. Also, don't forget the fact that Josh Harris hired this guy to help him with the Sixers, but he never hired him like full-blown, full-time like he just did here for the Commanders. I believe this is the highest position he's ever actually held, like with a professional American sports franchise, like out of the NBA, NFL, NHL. Maybe I could be wrong, but McGrath will work to implement programming that creates individualized plans for each athlete, applying new technology, best practices from around the world, and adding inputs across all sports science platforms. McGrath has provided clinical consultancy across the world for over 35 professional sports teams across 11 different leagues. He has consulted teams in the NFL, NBA, NHL, English Premier League, MLR, the Major League Rugby, AFL, Australian Football League, NRL, National Rugby League, English Premiership Rugby, Super Rugby, A-League, and both international rugby as well as World Rugby Sevens. I didn't even know they had that many rugby leagues, and those guys don't even play with like actual pads and helmets and things like that. So if he's used to figuring out how to prevent injuries for them, the NFL should be a little bit easier, I'm hoping, on his behalf. But yeah, man, this guy has his own business. He was literally the clinical research director for Pitch Ready, a company that I believe he created himself, and he's just gone around helping different sports franchises again around the world with that. And for us to be able to take him off the market, stop helping all those other people, maybe your company can continue to do that, but we need you here. We need all of your science and your analytics, all of your data, all of your numbers and predictive models, and even just patience to develop like different individual programs for each athlete is insane. Not just a general one for like offensive linemen or defensive lines like most NFL teams are probably doing. He's coming here to make sure every single player is accounted for individually, exactly what they need specifically. And then to match that up with Eugene Shin on the super analytics and sports science side of things and the numbers, and then Adam Peters, the football guy, I'm telling y'all, this organization is about to be ran so well, y'all are not even gonna recognize it in a couple of years. So great promotion, Commanders. I really rock with Tim McGrath. That's why I did a whole 30-minute breakdown on him already like a couple of months ago, and now I'm really excited that he just got promoted. Moving on, NFL draft analyst Ian Cummings, that does like quarterback breakdowns, wide receiver breakdowns. He just covers the entire draft. He has no affinity towards the Commanders, no bias against this or nothing. He was just watching 2024 draft wide receivers, and when he got to Rome Odunze, he literally compared him to Art Monk. And I thought that was really interesting. Of course, there's some people in the comment section that's like, get out of here. There's absolutely no way. You must have never watched them. And he's pleading with people like, yeah, I have watched them. I think that, first of all, he's basically saying that Art Monk is very underrated, and he's just that high on Rome Odunze. And I feel like, if anything, that may actually be a compliment to both players, man. But, you know, let me know in the comment section how you feel about that comparison. If you feel like that's overrated, underrated, incorrect, correct, whatever. And then lastly, before we get up out of here, it's It's official that the Washington Commanders compensatory pick that we got from the 49ers in that Chase Young trade is now officially 99th. And up to this point today, we thought it was going to be like 100th, maybe even 101st. I saw somewhere like 102nd at one point in time. Now it's officially 99th, which is really interesting because that's actually Chase Young's jersey number, which is that's very ironic. But either way, that's good news for us. I don't know what changed. I don't know what happened with their formulas, what their equations came up with or anything like that. But I'm happy to know that we moved up a couple of picks. It's nothing major, but it's still beneficial. You never know, man. That 2 picks could be the difference between us getting the guy that we want and us not getting the guy that we want. So, hey, man, that's cool, man. Now you can officially say that we have another pick within the top 100 instead of right outside of it. But yeah, man, that's the end of this video. Please get in the comment section. Let me know how you feel about everything discussed in this video. Please stiff arm that like button, stiff arm the subscription button, and stiff arm the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Make sure you stay tuned for all of the content. Again, I have so many videos that I need to get out even just before March 11th because a lot of projection videos, a lot of wish list best case scenario things when it comes to like previewing free agency. I'm gonna look crazy trying to come out with that afterwards, so I got to get to work, man. So be on the lookout for another video tonight, something probably tomorrow morning as well, and so on and so forth. We got to get this thing going. So man, I really appreciate y'all. Stay tuned. And oh, again, I'm trying to remember to remind y'all at the end of every video so that you know for the next video that whenever I first release a video, especially if you're watching through a mobile device, just wait a second, refresh, come back a little bit later, because that's why the audio's not working. It's more of a YouTube upload thing for y'all on y'all end than it is from mine. So just remember that it's not my audio messing up or anything like that. It's like YouTube. Just wait a second if you're on a mobile device. Also, man, really appreciate y'all again. Make sure you leave a like on the way out. Let me know how you feel about everything about Adam Peters purging the roster. Do you feel like is justified with us only winning 4 games last season? Who are some Commanders free agents from the 2023 season that are now 2024 free agents available for anybody to sign that you want to bring back? Who are your priorities there? And then how do you feel about Rivera's being a cheapskate and the stats to prove it? How do you feel about the safety and the center position being very devalued, and how the fact that we need those positions? So that's a good thing for us, but it's terrible for the players. Let me know how you feel about Tim McGrath and how he's going to impact this team, and the fact that Adam Peters loves him lets me know I need to love him, even if I didn't already love him before we hired Adam Peters. Let me know all of that. I really appreciate y'all, man. RP to Toriyama for sure. And let me get back to what I was watching. I'll catch y'all later. I'm out.